Hello everyone in the room. Hello everyone not in the room. Obviously, this is being streamed and broadcast and recorded for for sharing and disseminating widely at some point in the future. So you're very welcome, whatever way you've joined us today. This was really supposed to be chaired by Hugh Greenhay, and I am not Hugo Greenhay. It's just to say it at the outset. So for anyone who's disappointed and wants to leave now, that's okay. My name is Tiernan Brady. I'm the Global Director of Inclusion at Clifford Chance, the law firm, probably for the purpose actually of today, since it's a careers fair and there's a lot of discussion about careers. Might be worth some background. I came to the firm 3 years ago, having been the director of the Australian referendum on marriage equality, on the yes side. I should say it'd be very unusual director of inclusion if I'd ran no side. Which thankfully was successful, and Ireland or Australia became the second country in the world to pass marriage equality for LGBTQ plus people by a public vote. The first country was Ireland, and I was the political director of that before, which is how I ended up in Australia in the first place, since I presume I don't sound that Australian. But the only reason I say that as background is just as we think about careers and pathways and how you can create change, and how no matter what you do from today on, you don't know where it'll take you, and you should let it take you anywhere, because probably most career paths never end up looking what they think they're going to look like. There was a great Muhammad Ali line, I had a wonderful plan, and then someone punched me, and that's true about career paths. So I highlight this only to say enjoy and be open to adventure on your journey and on your career. Now, on a much more serious note about today, the session today is about being in solidarity with Ukraine. And we wanted to look at a couple of different angles and dimensions on that. But to say at the beginning a couple of things, we talked a lot, and perhaps in the UK in particular, we've seen a lot over the last few weeks of solidarity between many letters of LGBTQ. That solidarity is really important. And perhaps sometimes we haven't always thought about that. Sometimes I used to say LGBT isn't a French word, the T isn't silent. So all the letters matter greatly. And with solidarity between those letters, then we don't drive the change that we really want, because equality can't be for some people. It's not equality if it's only for some people. But that solidarity is wonderful to see in the face of really challenging times. Also true for anybody who is LGBTQ plus, and for any ally in the world, that solidarity isn't just about this parish or this city or this country. Solidarity has to be geographic as well, because it's not good enough if some people are doing okay in Dublin and in Paris and in Amsterdam, whilst the rest of the world doesn't look like that. And that we're prepared to fold our arms and go, do you know what? I'm doing fine. I don't need to worry about the rest of the world. Again, that's not how solidarity works. And we can't have inclusion and equality and justice for LGBTQ plus people in the world unless it's in the world and not just on my street. I'm okay, Jack. So that's one of the reasons why today is important, and for all the people joining us online, it's also important, hopefully, for many people from Ukraine and from other parts of the world where change can seem unlikely or challenge is more likely for LGBT people. So hopefully there's some inspiration from the stories here today as well. The second thing to say, we've been joined by a really great panel. So I'm going to try and do a very un-Irish thing, which is not talk too much. And I'm going to try and get other people to talk a little. But the panel is going to take a look at several angles. One of the most powerful angles will definitely be human stories. And we want to hear from some Ukrainian LGBTQ plus colleagues and friends about what the experience of the last 2 months is like, what they're hearing on the ground, what they're feeling being distant from their families or from their home country, but also to get a little bit of history. And I'm going to go to Edward in a minute about this one, about what is currently happening in Kiev and what had been the LGBTQ history in Kiev. How had it been going in Ukraine? And also we're going to talk obviously about the legal aspect of this, asylum and refugees. So there's quite a few different angles, all of which are really important, and we really want you to enjoy it. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves and tell them a little bit about themselves before we go from questions. So I'm going to start on the screen, if that's all right. I'm going to pick on you, Edward, first, if that's okay. If you want to introduce yourself, but also give a few minutes of background about, why you're on the panel at all, and what you'd like people to think about today.
Hello. My name is Edward Rees. I am a trans non-binary activist from Kyiv, Ukraine, and I want you to please try pronouncing the name of our capital Kyiv, not Kiev, because Kiev is a Russian pronunciation and we don't like it. I am a member and a worker of the organization which is called Kyiv Pride. It's the most visible organization of LGBTQ people in Ukraine. And the main thing that we do is for 10 years already, we are making the biggest Pride March in Ukraine, in Kyiv, which is called March for Equality. We also have several other cities in Ukraine which are making Pride marches. It's Kharkiv, Odessa, Zaporizhia, Kherson. And we were going to expand the Pride movement in Ukraine this year. I don't know if we will be able to do it. We are also advocating different laws, for example, anti-discrimination law, which was in the work before the big invasion of Russia and Ukraine. We're planning to start working on the law which will let queer people marry each other. And we are definitely caring for the community. We are working with politicians, with businesses, and I guess doing everything that we can for LGBTQ people in Ukraine. And now we are continuing doing this, but in other circumstances, we are doing other things, but we are still helping. Personally, I'm right now a refugee. I'm in Copenhagen, Denmark. And but I'm continuing working for Kyiv Pride remotely.
Thanks, Edward. And we'll come back because I have obviously about 10 follow-up questions for all of that, to be honest. And in the room, we're joined by Anna Nestorenko. I'm going to get that surname right, am I?
Yes, it's all correct, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. I'm originally from Ukraine, and I live now in London for a year and a half. I'm not represented any official organization, so I'm here to share my personal story and my personal experience of growing up as a queer in Ukraine, and also my life in different countries, including UK.
And again, we're going to come back to that one as well. I mean, it's worth saying, I think one of the most interesting things about Human Stories is the number one reason most people become a supporter for LGBT equality is when they meet someone who is LGBTQ+. And that might seem overly simple, but ridiculously, all the research tells us that. So Human Stories aren't just a nice thing to have, they are actually where change really happens. So, and I know you've got a couple of different aspects which we're going to come to. Now I'm bouncing back over to online to Ruslan Pavlishin. Tell me I've said that right.
Yes, thank you. It was well attempted. Thank you for having me here. My name is Ruslan. I'm from Lviv, from Western Ukraine. I have studied for 5 years in Berlin in Germany, and now I'm a student at Oxford. I'm also representing the Oxford University Ukrainian Society here. And I would like to focus on this panel on the effects of the war on LGBTQI+ Ukrainians, and what can we do to support Ukraine. Also, as a member of a student organization, I would like to address all students in the audience to encourage you to make your voices heard. There are many things we can do to support Ukraine, and you can make a difference, even as a student.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Ruslan. Back in the room, Claire Fletcher from Rainbow Migration, who unfortunately probably is quite busy at the minute.
Yeah, we are. Although not just with, well, not with Ukrainian refugees yet. So I've been working at Rainbow Migration. I'm an LGBTQI+ asylum support worker. So what my role is I provide lots of different support services to people seeking asylum in the UK. We, as an organisation, we also give free legal advice to LGBTQI+ people seeking asylum. And we also have a campaign and policy team as well that are currently challenging the Nationality and Borders Bill that's currently making its way through Parliament.
Thanks, Claire. And finally, Chimera. Chimera, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, all. My name is Chimera. I'm a Ukrainian drag queen living in Poland. I'm happy to be in this panel, and what I would like to bring to the table is a perspective of Polish people taking in refugees from Ukraine, as well as LGBTQ refugees, and share some of my personal stories as well.
Thanks very much. I look forward to hearing those ones. I'm going to bounce back to Edward, first of all, to be honest, to start with. I'm just thinking, Edward, as an activist on the ground in Kyiv, and who has now had to leave, even just some context to start with, the build-up over the last couple of years of Kyiv Pride, has that been growing and been doing well? And then what has happened as a result of the invasion in terms of that LGBT activist infrastructure? Has that been dismantled, or where are people going, or how are people being protected on the ground?
Well, the first thing I could say that Ukraine is actively going to Europe in the terms of human rights and LGBTQ rights. So the Pride marches have been growing every year. We definitely didn't have one in the year of pandemic in 2020. But we had an online Pride March, and we had a very big amount of online events dedicated to the Pride Month. And last year in 2021, we had 7,000 people on the Pride March in Kyiv, and it was in September. It was cold and rainy, but people came. As I told, we were working on different laws, advocacy campaigns, and so on. And when the big invasion started, we definitely had to switch everything just on a whim, because it was we didn't have any opportunity or any need to do what we were doing before the big invasion, because we just woke up on the 24th of February to bombings, to sirens, and we had to remake everything. So in fact, on the 26th of February, our team had to go to the Donetsk region. I had to go to Bakhmut, a little city in Donetsk region. Other members of our team had to go to Kramatorsk in March to make events for the community, to teach them some gender studies and so on. And then the invasion started, and maybe you know that yesterday Kramatorsk was bombed, and there was around 50 people, I guess, by now, which are dead, and 100 or more people injured on the railway station where people tried to evacuate from Kramatorsk. So, and there is many news like this every day. LGBT community of Ukraine is fighting, working for each other right now. Many of us had to leave the country because many of us have lost our homes or opportunities to get medicine and so on. But there are a great amount of Ukrainians who are in the army, who are volunteering. The whole Kyiv Pride team, besides me, are staying in Ukraine. And they are volunteering for Ukrainian army. They are volunteering for the people who are victims of this war. They are providing shelter, not only for LGBTQ Ukrainians, but they are providing volunteer help for anyone who is in need. Other organizations are making shelters for LGBT Ukrainians in western parts of the country, trans organizations are providing hormones for those in need, because it's really hard to find anything right now in Ukraine, some specific healthcare. And we are providing psychological help, making every week or even every day online consultations by psychologists. We have a support chat, which I am moderating. So we have really big amount of work right now. We are still activists, definitely, but our activism is changed completely. And we hope our main work to inform people, to provide study, to provide advocacy will return after the war. But right now we have to do this.
Apart from, I presume for everyone in the room and everyone watching this online, I mean, that's just a mix of terrifying and awesome in the true inspiring sense of awesome, to have to go through all of that. I wondered as well, as someone who's in an activist organization, a campaigning organization for equality, I mean, there's no doubt that over the last few years, you can feel, and indeed Mr. Putin has said this in his messaging about the attack and invasion of Ukraine, where he started talking about the culture wars and about gender identity within those conversations. And the layer of pressure that brings to bear on LGBT activists, knowing that he is putting you and LGBT equality in general at the front of the culture war reasons for him invading Ukraine in the first place. So I just wonder about how LGBT activists are bearing up, or what supports there to try and help get specific NGO activists out, because obviously the real danger is, I'm sure they run a significantly higher risk of being targeted by Mr. Putin.
Well, I would first, I guess, I would ask you not to say that Putin is the person who is killing Ukrainians. It's Russian people who are killing Ukrainians. It's Russian army, and it's Russian people who are supporting the army with their taxes and with their silence. So it's not Mr. Putin. It's Russian people. It's everyone in Russia, except maybe some activists, like around 100 people who we know personally. So what I would like to say about your question, in fact, is we are looking at Russia because it's our closest neighbor on the east. We're looking at Russia from 2013, when they actually created the anti-gay propaganda law. And we see that Ukraine is moving really, really fast outside of this system, outside of this conservative Russian values. And we are really working on getting like several light years from that. And we don't want to see it in our country. And now when we know that maybe LGBTQ activists are more targeted in this, we would be targeted if Ukraine would lose this war, and we will not lose this war, because it's not like the war with this particular army which is going to our country right now. It's, as I said, it's the war of values. It's the war with conservative, old, dying world, and it's the war that we have to win to survive. So now we are not thinking about any lists of LGBTQ activists or any special targeting of someone in Ukraine. We are one big nation, we are one big army, and we are fighting all together. And we see in Ukraine actually that people are, even our personal Ukrainian conservative people, we have them definitely, every country have them. We see that our conservatives either left the country because they were pro-Russian. We had a great amount of pro-Russian politicians and activists and so on. So they fled the country, they ran out. Or we see that people are changing their minds about LGBTQ community because they see that we are in the army, that we are volunteering, that we are the same Ukrainians, the same soldiers that everyone else is. So we really hope that after the war, our steps for new values, for freedom, for queer people will be more effective, even more effective than before.
Thanks, Edward. And I'm sure, well, not I'm sure, everybody here thinks that. I was thinking, Anna, to you in the room now about, we were talking about Russia as well. You have the unique experience in this panel anyway of having experienced Russia, lived in Ukraine, and lived in the UK, and seen some very different worlds and some very different trends, which I think might be really interesting for people.
Yeah, because, well, what I need to say first of all is I think, like, from my experience living in UK, because of course Ukraine is, as a whole, Eastern Europe is something quite far from here. Not a lot of people have been there. So before the war started, in general, I think our countries used to be looked on together, like whole Eastern European bloc. So like before, when I would introduce myself, people would ask like, Ukraine? Is it somewhere in Russia? Is it somewhere in Poland? Do you speak Polish there? Like, they will be surprised that I speak English, that I'm here in general, like, because there are not a lot of us here, unfortunately. Probably coming more again, unfortunately, because of the war. But anyway, so, and I think from this point of view, that's also how people in the West look on, you know, used to look on us. So like on the specifically LGBTQ plus community. So they'll be either be surprised that we exist at all and we are not silent, and that I can, you know, like say straight, like on my social media or anywhere, that I belong to this community. So I think it's, yeah, but what I need to say, the most important point, there is a huge difference between Ukraine and Russia in a lot of aspects, in all of aspects, but especially in this one. So even speaking from the legal point of view, as Edward mentioned, from 2014, Russia officially has a law against propaganda of homosexuality among children. But this law is quite vague. So basically anything posted on social media, shown, I don't know, on TV, just being on the street can be considered to this. So if I would go, I don't know, like holding a hand of my girlfriend on the street, anyone basically can consider us as a propaganda, because children might see us. So we could be reported to the police. But this doesn't exist in Ukraine. So unfortunately, we still can't marry in Ukraine, but we are definitely moving in this direction. And also, of course, like the way how LGBT community feels itself now is really different from the Ukraine where I grew up, because of course, like a lot of years has passed, and we're definitely moving to the Western values direction, so the direction of Europe, human rights, and yeah, so it just makes a huge difference from my experience when I was a child, and also when I come back now to Ukraine. And I can say this, at least from the official governmental point of view, I feel completely safe. So I know that if someone will try to, I don't know, to insult me or attack me, I can easily report them and this will be solved. Of course, the difference comes when you speak about like more close interaction just with the people, because still in Ukraine, for example, church has a big influence on like ordinary people. So it really depends on which family you grew up from. For example, like my family, they're not religious at all, and they're like super supportive of me. But I had experience of, for example, my ex-girlfriend, she was from a very religious family. They actually put her like through the therapy, trying to stop her being lesbian and to make her straight, which didn't work, of course. So
Funny
yeah.
enough.
Yeah, so surprisingly. So yeah, I need to say that that of course Ukraine is not perfect, like as no country is perfect. If someone would say me that there is no homophobia in the UK, I will laugh in their face. So yeah, but we are definitely moving and developing. And at this point, I can say that I'm proud of my country, of what we've done so far.
Well, that's good. It's good to know. And you feel that momentum is growing and picking up speed at the minute. And perhaps one of the fact that this terrible thing has happened, the invasion, but has it done anything to public opinion in relation to thinking of themselves more as, we want to be in the European Union, we see a new set of values that we'd prefer to be attached to?
Yeah, and definitely, I think the main point is also me as Ukrainian. I was surprised as well that we united so much. Like I never felt as Ukrainian before as I feel now, and now I think that the people, they don't really, of course, there are still just some discussions going on, but they will be all the time. But I think on the bigger scale, everyone is just super united and they don't care if, if you're LGBTQ plus or not, if you, which city you come from, religion or anything, because now we have like the main goal, we need to win. And I think that's going to help us in general in moving to this direction. Because for example, one of the main, propaganda arguments by Russian media stating that we are like brotherly nations, because through the history we're like part of Soviet Union, we're part of Russian Empire. And now I think that anyone, even if someone had any thoughts about it before the invasion, I don't think that you'll find a single Ukrainian who would believe in this anymore. So we're definitely moving far from this and fast.
Well, I mean, I even think, and as you rightly say, nowhere's perfect. So, I mean, I think the UK, I'm right in saying, has had its own little chat about conversion therapy over the last few weeks as well. So everywhere can go up, and everywhere is on its own journey. There's nowhere that we get to look and think we're just fantastic compared to somewhere else. We're all 50 years, we're only 50 years away from everywhere having been terrible. So, I think it's wonderful to hear this idea that in challenging moments, we lose sight of our difference and just see what it is that turns us into one people, and the potential for emerging from that, hopefully taking that lesson for all the populations within Ukraine afterwards. But Ruslan probably has been chatting to quite a few people. Ruslan, I'm right in saying you run the Ukrainian Society in Oxford?
Yes.
Ruslan, we're going to have a go at the tech, if that's okay. There's something wrong with the sound. We'll come back. Can we come back to you in a minute? Someone down the back will look frantically stressed and try and work out what's going on. Perhaps so. Whilst we're waiting on you, Ruslan, we're going to go back. Claire, much more. I suppose it's not the individual human story necessarily. It's much more. Your work right now is at the cold face of seeing, do regulations work? Can people get in? How easy is it to become a refugee or asylum seeker here? Answer that one. You got a minute or two. Yeah, you got a while. Answer that one.
Yeah, so I just want to say at the offshoot that trying to seek asylum in the country, in the UK, isn't easy for anybody. But for LGBTQI plus people, it has unique challenges. So I don't know if you want me to talk through some of those. Yeah. Okay.
Be interesting for people. I think it would be interesting for people.
Hopefully. At the moment, obviously, we've got the Nationality and Borders Bill, the anti-refugee bill going through at the moment. But just even if, that will look like it will go through sort of towards the end of the month, unfortunately. But even now, if you're coming into the UK to seek asylum and you're LGBTQI+, there is a really sort of strong culture of disbelief towards people. And there's an expectation to prove that you are LGBTQI+. Just for someone to think about this for a moment, if you have fled some of the situations that our service users have, just to think about like grabbing evidence or like bringing with you some kind of proof that you maybe are trans or you're a lesbian or bisexual. So there is, that kind of expectation by the Home Office. Interestingly, if the Nationality and Borders Bill does go through, that burden of proof on LGBTQI+ people will increase. So there will be an even higher standard to prove your LGBTQI+-ness. So yeah, is unfortunate. Also, in terms of expectations, if you're LGBTQI+ and you're seeking asylum, there's an expectation that you have had this emotional coming out, and there is an expectation of a very specific narrative. So, putting everybody into one size fits all.
Okay, I mean, the new legislation, we think of LGBTQ plus people coming from Ukraine. If the new legislation passes, how does it go? It becomes even harder to justify or prove or demonstrate.
Exactly. And for example, there's new groups, they're proposing groups of refugees. So if you're a group 2 refugee or a person seeking asylum, if you have gone through a country before reaching the UK, then you would be classed as group 2 because you're traveling through a safe country. So obviously you have to be of a very privileged socio-economic status to be able to get on an aeroplane and fly directly to the UK. So that would obviously affect a lot of people.
And there are no direct flights in Ukraine.
Currently. So yeah.
So the whole game is rigged, that you can't fly directly from Ukraine to here. And the only way you can claim asylum is if you flew directly from Ukraine to here.
No, it would be a different type. You would be classed as a different type of refugee, so you would have less protections. So it would have less entitlement to support. You would have a lower right of stay. So it's very really stacked unfairly against people who can't do that. If you think about the small boats, there are very limited safe routes to come to the UK. We're an island, so yeah, it's even more hostile than it is now.
And just in past, I mean, obviously there are some Ukrainian people getting through to apply. I don't know, have you had many applications yet get out to even get this far to be able to do that?
We haven't personally, because I think that the grounds, if you want to claim asylum, you have the conflict. So most people would claim, I'm assuming, on that basis. So I would expect people, as it progresses, that we will see more people from Ukraine maybe seeking our help. We have had a lot of requests from our inbox from people from Ukraine about protection and that kind of thing. But we obviously can't give advice to anybody who are currently outside of the UK. So yeah, I would imagine we would see more in the future.
I mean, you just think, I'm going to go to Humira in a minute. You just think to yourself, what could we campaign for as LGBTQ plus people? You're going, well, there's a bill that's going to have a ferocious negative impact on equality and outcomes and just human rights and the right to be here at a time of global crisis. So I presume we'll probably send something around after this session, from the National Student Pride will about things you can do, but I'm not sure. Are there campaigns out there at the minute you can join to go, this is a crummy law, please don't make it happen?
Yeah, absolutely. You can have a look on our Instagram. You can, Refugee Action is also doing a really big campaign, Refugee Council. Yeah, there's a Rainbow Migration and Micro Rainbow as well.
Micro Rainbow.
They are a housing charity who house LGBTQI plus people seeking asylum.
Oh, fun. Yeah, so there's something to do to start with. I keep thinking at the end of a session like this, when we can all feel so helpless, we want to think about, well, what can we do? Which I'm going to ask everybody, by the way, just at the end, something you can do. Humira, I mean, sorry, and I'm looking around here to the big screen for anyone looking in the camera, which doesn't make sense if you're looking at me in the camera. On the ground in Poland, I mean, obviously that's a first destination for so many people who are fleeing. and within that, obviously, have to be the largest number of LGBTQ plus people who have left Ukraine. So, could you tell us a little bit about what's actually happening there?
Yes, absolutely. Poland has taken in more than 3 million refugees, so it's a big number of Ukrainians fleeing here, and naturally, a lot of LGBT people are also trying to find safety here. And while Poland is a European country, it may be not the most how to say it, open to the LGBT community, as we've seen in the past with even the Pride events or the actions of the politics here. Nonetheless, something that is worth mentioning is the fact that being in this suppressed environment where LGBT, even Polish LGBT community, is not so welcome in their own country, it only makes us stronger. It only makes us more united. It only makes us more supportive of each other. So us taking in, or Polish LGBT organizations taking in Ukrainians are very much used to the situations where those Ukrainian people are coming from, where there's not that much acceptance, where it's maybe not so safe to be fully yourself. And that knowledge of LGBT community in Poland allows to fully accommodate the needs of Ukrainian LGBT community. I was able to participate in such supportive actions by offering translations, by offering my knowledge of languages, which kind of allows to connect the two dots, which is very important to make sure that everyone feels safe. And this allowed to create safe spaces for LGBT Ukrainians in Poland, because while a lot of people flee Poland, not all LGBT people may feel safe within Polish families, because again, acceptance is not 100% present here. So the need to create those LGBT-friendly environments, families, places is very important, and this definitely happened. And I've also seen some of the comments of common Polish people being like, oh, why do we need to create LGBT-friendly accommodations or LGBT-friendly lists of places to stay? Are they like superior? Are they like exceptional? Which only speaks about some of the intolerance that is still present in Poland, and only proves the need to create such spaces to make sure that, in fact, those LGBT people are safe here in Poland. So this is what's been happening so far.
Thanks, Samira. I mean, it's just so inspiring when you think about sometimes out of horrendous moments in history comes great community. And it's wonderful to hear that. It's wonderful to hear that so much has been done with the organizations on the ground, connecting people. And certainly I would imagine when we come around to what can people do, I'm sure you'll have somewhere where people could donate to as well, or organizations that they should look up and try and support. And of course, I was thinking about something else you said before. We'll try Ruslan again in a second, hopefully. If persecution worked, none of us would exist. It doesn't. Throughout history, we've probably been on the wrong end of the stick for the vast majority of history. They've done everything they can, multiple cultures, multiple communities, multiple moments in time, and all it has done is make us stronger, bring us together. If it worked, we wouldn't be here. So we know we can beat any form of persecution. And I think it's wonderful to see, even in the face of persecution, what happens is community gets amplified rather than actually gets diminished. So it's wonderful to hear. Ruslan, I'm going to chance your sound. Hopefully it's working from the perspective of being the leader of the Ukrainian Society in Oxford, to get a sense of what you're hearing from your fellow students as well, and what the experience is like when you're representing people here from the Ukrainian community.
Thank you. I will try to speak again. Can you hear me now? Yes, thank you.
Perfectly.
Yes, I'm not the leader of the society. I'm part of the executive committee. And the society has formed very quickly at the very beginning of the war. At the day of the invasion, on the 24th of February, we have organized a rally in the center of Oxford, and we got together 7 members of the society to form this community. We have been fundraising, organizing informational events. Just a few days ago, we organized a fundraising dinner where we raised almost £10,000. So our aim was to support Ukraine as much as possible through donations. In doing so, I would like to point out one foundation that particularly supports LGBTQI community in Ukraine. This is the Insight Foundation, which is a Ukrainian-run foundation. It gives psychological support, and evacuation needs to LGBTQ plus members in need. So from all the communities are being supported right now, if you want to support the LGBTQ plus community, this is the foundation to go to.
Thanks, Ruslan. Sorry, and I know, to be honest, actually, I know because there's so much detail in this, we're already running over. But I just want to know in advance, first of all, if anyone in the room had any questions in particular that they'd like to ask. Because I know we've been quite thorough in terms of everything that we've covered. Because I know we were only given 45 minutes, and I think we're well past that. But I think that reflects how important it is and how many awesome things are happening. So what I am going to do is ask each one of the 5, everybody, to say, to think about, is there one particular thing you would like to say to people that they could get involved in, or a campaign they could join, or an organization they should look up, or a place that they could donate to, if that's okay? And I'm going to do that in no particular order. Ruslan, I'm going to start with you, if that's all right.
Yes. I would
That's great.
the same recommendation that I just gave to support Insight, a Ukrainian-run LGBTQ plus organization, and on a more public level, talk about, read about it, write about it. There's not enough that's been said. Media often leaves out LGBTQ plus suicide.
Brilliant, thank you. Chimera?
So naturally support Kyiv Pride, a Ukrainian organization, but also support your local organizations, find local places that support Ukrainians, be there, be present, be supportive, share news, share information, give Ukrainians space and voice.
Thank you, Chimera. Edward, over in Copenhagen.
Yeah, actually, Chimera said about Kyiv Pride, so I won't repeat it. Please support us because we're helping people in Ukraine right now. And I would ask you to spread information as much as you can, the information from Ukraine and from Ukrainians, not international media, not like American press. We have enough channels of information in Ukraine which are speaking English. Go to rallies and protests at your countries to demand more help for Ukraine.
Thanks, Edward. And actually, just to repeat, I think that's such an important point about if you are, as a campaigner, thinking about what you want to share, think about what will connect with people most that you're trying to connect with. So I think if you can find Ukrainian source material and LGBTQ campaigning material from the region, all the better. Claire.
So obviously there's been some excellent suggestions already, but if you want to support LGBTQI plus people seeking asylum, then you can donate to Rainbow Migration. But I would very much agree with the rest of the panel that elevating the voices of people with lived experiences is very important in any campaigning that you do.
And there's a really bad crummy law that we want to campaign against.
And also write your MP to oppose nationality and borders bill.
And Anna.
Yeah, well, I need to say that I did a small research. One of my closest friends, she's a manager of the section of Insight, the organization that Ruslan mentioned in Uzhgorod. So
Insight.
so I asked her to kind of what kind of support she believes that people there and also people who left need. And they say that, of course, there is a great support in terms of physical aspects. So like shelters, money raised, donations, but I feel that all of us, we also need psychological support a lot, especially for the people, both for the people inside Ukraine and for those who left it, because it's a big stress when you move somewhere in any time, but especially in the time of such a big terrible situation. So I would just say to, I don't know, if you know someone who left or if you know someone from there, just talk to them, because it's all the donations is amazing. All the, you know, like legal support is fantastic. It's something that we need very much, but also just to feel that we are not alone, that there is someone you can talk to and you can share your thoughts and your problems, which is, that is a great help. So.
I think that's such an important point, and I'm just going to emphasize it at the end. So, first of all, Insight and Rainbow Migration, and I'm missing one. I was sorry,
Kyiv
pardon me,
Pride.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I knew you'd jump in there if I'd forgotten it. Brilliant. So they're all worth looking up, all worth thinking about how you support them. There are obviously lots of other doorways as well, but this is the advice from the panel today. The other bit I would say is, I mean, I think Anna's point is just so right. We underestimate the power of ourselves and the influence each one of us have as individuals all the time when it comes to campaigning. You know, joining up, reaching out, talking to someone, you know, this isn't a side benefit to campaigning, it's what campaigning's for. And when it comes to inclusion for any population group, like we said earlier, it is when people stop thinking about it as a what and start thinking about it as a who, that they become great supporters. And that happens through conversation. So do, as Anna says, you know, think about your network. Think, can you reach out 2 degrees or 3 degrees of separation to someone, you know, who you could have a phenomenal impact on just by reaching out. Don't underestimate yourselves, both through the organizations that you could campaign through, but also just as an individual, what you could do. So to everyone who's joined us online, and everyone joined us in the room today, thank you so much for spending the time with us. I know this is a really serious topic, and unfortunately will be serious for quite some time, you know, into the future. So this is going to need some commitment and long-term support as well. And I want to thank Claire and Anna. I want to thank Chimera, Edward, and Ruslan, and to all the team who helped put all this magic together. Thank you very much for the time, and go forth and campaign. You know, we know that we're stronger when we do this together, and equality is only equality if it doesn't recognize borders. So what's real for somebody on the east coast of Poland or in the west of Ukraine matters every bit as much to someone in Bristol today. And that's how we should always campaign. Thanks for the time. Thank you.